writing songs, it was because there were things I wanted to say that I couldn't find anybody else's words that said them quite the same. I mean, I'd been very happy singing other people's songs, and in some ways they said things that I cared about because I chose songs that, you know, meant something to me. But I think a lot of the time, originally, I chose songs because I liked the music and I liked the feeling they gave me. But when it actually came to the ideas that I wanted to say, that was where I needed my own words. I felt like I needed my own words, because while somebody else was saying something good that I agreed with, there was a level of my own thinking that I wasn't able to get across with somebody else's words, or my own passion. Yeah, maybe.
So what would be one of the first songs you'd ever written yourself? Do you remember? Because you've written so many songs. And
yeah, well, the first song, I mean, the first song, I didn't start writing songs until I became a sort of Jesus person in the early 70s. And up until that point, I hadn't written anything. And I think that part of the reason was that I might have lacked self-confidence about it. Occasionally I dabble with a song idea, but I tend to think, oh no, you know, Bob Dylan said that so much better, or you know, somebody else said that really well. And so I had probably a little bit of an inferiority thing about, oh, I'm not as good as they are, you know, sort of thing. I mean, this is all in hindsight, you know. At the time I wasn't thinking in those terms, but when I sort of came to this belief in God and stuff, I wanted to say something about that. And most of the music that was around that was talking about those things in those days was very schmaltzy and very religious and very not me, you know. It was another generation, it was another world. But I wanted to say some things about what I was feeling and thinking and starting to believe and stuff. And I found one or two people who were talking about those things in, you know, more modern language, people like Larry Norman and stuff like that. But they still weren't saying it how I wanted to say it, so that was what got me writing. And the first song I wrote was a song of that sort. It was a sort of a, you know, you could have a changed life kind of song. It was very naive and sort of idealistic and stuff like that. And it was also weird because it wasn't the kind of song I'd normally write. Like, I was into Led Zeppelin and Hendrix and all this kind of stuff.
So we can tell that by your guitar style sometimes.
Yeah, right, yeah, it gives it away now and then. And yet the first song I wrote was this very cutesy little country song. And I don't really know where that came from musically, because I wasn't into that at all. I mean, I liked Neil Young and stuff. Well, he was, you know, he's pretty country. And I liked Dylan, and he did a lot of country stuff. But I still, and I guess that's where it came from, that stuff. So I don't know why I chose that style. But lyrically it was probably very predictable.
Is it on any of your albums?
No, it's way,
way before the albums.
That. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Had about 8 verses or something, you know. I was trying to be Dylan-esque, you know. I think I might have cut it down to 4 a few years later when I realised it was just a bit silly. Yeah.
So that kind of leads on to the next question, which are what are the influences that have turned you on to writing your own music? Well, you've just about answered that question.
Yeah, well, there was all sorts. I mean, the Beatles, and, you know, probably a lot of the predictable ones, you know. I mean, I loved listening to Joni Mitchell and Dylan and those sort of people and words. I mean, most of what they were singing about I didn't understand at 15 or 16 when I was getting into playing their songs. I could play you know, Queen of the Parking Lot and I Shall Be Released and things like that when I was 15 or something, but I didn't have any life experience to know what they were talking about all the time. I mean, I knew bits of it, but you know, I learned songs like Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, yeah. I learned that, which had, you know, umpteen number of verses. Well, I got no idea what a lot of it was about. If I thought back over it now, I'd probably figure out bits. And I guess most people don't know what a lot of Dylan songs are about. But the thing about words fascinated me, and what you could do with them, the pictures you could create with them. And, yeah.
Really, I suppose to paraphrase that is, what are you hoping the audience is your audience is going to get out of it, or what do you do you want to portray or get across?
Well, I used to be very deliberate about that. I mean, and obviously in my sort of early Christian kind of days, I wanted to tell people, that Jesus loved them and kind of, those kind of cliches and things, I suppose. But I really did want to do that. But I didn't want to do it in a schmaltzy way, because I knew how I reacted to that before I was one of those people, And I think, oh no, don't give me that old, thing. So I wanted to say the same things, but in a fresh way. But and then later on, and then I started writing sort of protesty songs, and look what a mess the world is, and we really need to change, which was a sort of variation on the theme, really. But I think as time's gone on, I've come to writing more just songs out of personal experience, and I have less of an intention to convert people to anything or to make them think a certain way. It's more just to say, this is a bit of my story, and you might relate to it, because we all, in our way, are not as different as we think sometimes. We all have the same feelings and elements of hopes and fears that there's, if I tell my story, you'll probably relate to it too, sort of stuff. So that's how I come at it mostly these days.